discuss giving intramuscular injections, which means a muscle injection of medication into the muscle. And first thing we need to do with giving any injection, we need to see what size needle we need and what size syringe we're going to need. Sometimes needles come packaged together. They'll come already with one attached. They will come with one separately, and they may come with just a syringe in a packet and then a needle in the packet. Notice how these have got safety devices on them. And now everything in the facilities have got safety devices because you do not want a needle stick. So needles are not created equally. Whenever we get to talking about needles, the bigger the needle, the bigger the number, the smaller the gauge. And the gauge means the hole in the needle. So if it is for example, if it's a 24 gauge, that is going to be smaller than an 18 gauge. An 18 gauge is usually I'll say the biggest needle that you will find, or the fattest needle that you will find in a facility. They do make 14 and 16 gauges, and those are used for when you donate blood. If you've ever given blood and you've seen how big that needle is, then those are usually 14 gauges. So an 18 gauge is the biggest that you will see on the floor in a facility. And when it comes to different types of needles like these that are given for injections, you may see 25, 26 gauges, maybe even some 28 gauges, and those are very, very thin. So let's look at the difference. I'm going to open one here. And again, if I'm giving one in the deltoid, like on my deltoid here, I would probably use a 5/8 inch or a 1 inch. I would not need an 1.5 inch long needle. If I was giving one in the top of my thigh, I may need a 1 inch needle for the muscle, or maybe even a 1.5. It depends. If I'm giving a patient, say that my patient was 400 pounds and I was giving it in their deltoid, depending on their body structure, I may need an 1.5 inch long needle in order to give it in the deltoid. They do make 2 inch long needles, so if you had to give one maybe in their buttock, then you would need to have that right needle. And again, it's up to the nurse. A doctor's not going to tell you what size needle to use. He's going to leave that up to the nurse's discretion because it's in your scope of practice. I also need to see what kind of medicine I'm giving, because if a medicine is thin, and we're going to say today that we're going to give a flu vaccine. So if the medicine is thin, then I could use a very skinny needle. I could use a 25 gauge needle. If, say, I was giving a medication that was thick, maybe an antibiotic injection or a testosterone injection, then I would have, or a medication I've mixed with lidocaine, they're a little thicker, I would have to have a fatter needle, like maybe a 20 gauge needle. But the goal is you want to use the most appropriate size to cause the patient the least amount of discomfort. So I'm going to open these. So this is an 18 gauge 1.5 inch needle, and this one is an 25 gauge 1.5 inch needle. So the 25 gauge is going to be, and when you open a needle, by the way, the part here where the little hole is, where you would connect it to your syringe, you cannot touch that. That has to be sterile. But we're not going to use these. I'm just going to show you the difference in size. See how long that is? Put it next to my hand. And see how narrow that is and thin? If I was giving a medication that was really thick, it would not go through this. Now on the opposite end, let's look at this one. Look at that one. This is an 18 gauge, 1.5 inch. Which one would you rather have an injection with? This one, Sydney? No. This one's the one you want, because look how fat that is. Now again, there are parts of a needle that will come into play when we do different things. Notice how every needle has got like a point to it. Can you see the little hole? The pointy part is called the bevel. Let's see, as you can tell, if I was giving something very thick, I would never give an injection with an 18 gauge. I would probably use a 20 gauge, because that just looks like it's going to hurt. And 1.5 inch, I mean, that's a Mac Daddy one. So as you can tell the difference, I just wanted you to see the difference. And these are the safety devices that once you flick it back up and lock it, that will not come back down. So you want to be sure, and these are OSHA mandated, that now everything has to have a safety device on it. So I'm going to click it back up so I don't poke myself. And I will put those, I better put these in the sharp right now. I'm going to drop these into the sharps. So our patient, we've decided, has got an order for a pneumonia vaccine. And we're going to give it in the deltoid. So I've got me some syringes out here. Pneumonia vaccines are usually 1 cc, or flu vaccine, it's usually 1 cc. So I have decided on a 25 gauge needle that is 1 inch. And outside of every package, like this one is a 5 ml syringe, it has got a 22 gauge and 1 inch. And this is a 3 ml 25 gauge 1 inch. It's different. I mean, the needles is the same, but the syringe is bigger. And I don't need a 5 ml syringe. I'm only given 1 ml. So I'm going to use this one. Or let's see here. This one's 3 ml. Is it the same? It is, but you see how this one's packaged a little differently? This is a 23 gauge, which is, see, this one's 25. This one is 22, so it's a little narrower. It's 25. And this